More and more people are waking up. And part of waking up is coming to see that we are all connected, coming to feel and understand that we're all part of the same whole. We're all just different manifestations of the same consciousness. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome to the New Humans for New Earth podcast. I'm Queenie, your host. And on this podcast, we believe that every human alive today has a role to play in helping to co-create a new, more loving and more aligned world. Here, we introduce you to wisdom, perspectives, and information to support and inspire you in helping to co-create a new, more loving and more aligned world. We're here to help co-create New Earth. So let's talk about it. In today's episode, I want to talk with you about one of my favorite activities, which is talking with strangers. Now, before we dive in, I just want to acknowledge that in some ways, the concept of stranger danger has never been more relevant. But regardless of the rest of this episode, in no way am I asking or suggesting that anyone put themselves in harm's way. Okay? Now, this phenomenon, this aspect of culture in the United States that I want to speak into today is this tendency for us to act like other people don't exist. And, you know, I think we all are familiar with those moments where we accidentally make eye contact with someone we don't know. And there's this like nanosecond of, oh shit, I just got caught looking at someone else. And then one or both of you will look away and pretend like it didn't happen. You know this phenomenon? You know, it happens all over the place in our culture. For me, one of the most sort of poignant memories I have of this kind of thing was I had just entered the workforce and was either leaving or coming to work. And I found myself alone in an elevator with a man that I didn't know. And yes, there was sort of that like, I'm in an enclosed space with a strange man kind of thought that went through my mind. But what stuck with me most about that experience was that we both pretended like the other person wasn't there. You know, we're in this like 6 by 6 foot box together. And we didn't even look at each other. And it's this thing about American culture that I just really want to put on display today. Because we have such a practiced, deeply ingrained sort of sense of it is not okay to acknowledge other people. And maybe a better way to phrase it is the thing to do when you're out in public is to act like no one else is around you. Now, I mean, you know, there's reasons for this, right? You know, there was the Me Too movement, right? So now, as a result of that, and this is good, right? As a result of that, men are much more conscious about how they interact with women. But the extreme side, like the dark shadow side of that, is that a lot of men now are afraid to even talk to women or look at them or ask if they can hold the door for them, right? You know, and the flip side of it is like feminism. Right? Women are like, I don't owe you my time. I don't owe you a smile. I don't owe you a hello. I don't owe you any moment of my life to sit here and stand here and listen to you. Fully on board. And then sort of, you know, there's devices and social media. Apparently, most Americans spend about 6 hours per day on their devices. which means that regardless of, sort of the rest of your socialization, if you're spending that much time interfacing with something that doesn't require an exchange, a back and forth, doesn't require that you have some baseline sort of social skill, that when you get confronted with a situation where you have to exercise that, you're gonna feel more uncertain and nervous and probably freeze up and not say anything, right? And Gen Z, like, I'm talking to you, right? With all the compassion. And then you had COVID. During COVID, we experienced record levels of social isolation. And there were really good reasons for that. But during those years that the pandemic lasted, every single age group experienced significantly higher levels of social isolation. So people from the ages of 15 to 29 experienced 45% more time alone, which amounted to 6 hours of time by themselves. The next age bracket was something like 15 or 25% more. And the age bracket that was, I think it was 44 to 59 years old, experienced 10% more social isolation in their day-to-day. Now, because the quarantine has been lifted, right, and we're now, we've returned to work, we're out in the world, I'm sure those numbers have gone down. But what I'm observing and what I'm hearing from people is that they still feel disconnected, even though we've gotten beyond the quarantine. There's a sense in which we're living in these invisible cages in our minds. Cages that say, it's not safe or appropriate for me to interact with other humans when I'm out and about. And I think this has I don't just think it, I know it. This has very damaging effects. According to the Surgeon General, loneliness can have severe negative impacts on both the individual as well as the collective. So on the individual basis, the Surgeon General actually says that loneliness can have the impact on your physical and mental health equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And in the case of sort of the collective, right, collective cohesion, lack of social connection and cohesion undermines our sense of trust of other humans, which means that we're less able to cooperate to address collective issues. Now, the examples that the Surgeon General uses, is natural disasters, right? So communities that have more social cohesion are better able to respond to those because, hey, guess what? It's your neighbors and the people in your area who are most likely to be the first responders for you. But if you lack social cohesion, then they ain't coming, right? But the aspect of this that I'm interested in is the co-creation of New Earth, right? This is a collective project, and it's going to manifest in all kinds of different collective ways. And if we don't have that baseline foundation of social connection and trust with each other, we're never going to make it. There's another aspect of this that I want to sort of acknowledge, which is that, the tops of organizations have massive influence over the culture of those organizations. And, for instance, you're really able to see that, I think, in moments when leadership changes. And we just had one of those in the United States about a year ago. And there's this palpable shift that happens, right? The energy changes, the tenor changes. People suddenly are, well, I mean, what I observed was that people suddenly felt very uncertain. And I think also the whether you could trust other people became a big question. So, if this resonates with, if it resonates for you more to see this as a form of resistance, and by this I mean talking to strangers, then there's that aspect of this as well. Because, treating other people with kindness and warmth, as opposed to as enemies, or threats, right, to be defended against. I mean, that is a way of not buying in to the energy and the propaganda of this administration. So we can do it that way as well, if that works for you. I think as well, to ground this into some of the language that I've been using to describe the old paradigm, that the ultra wealthy and mega corporate interests benefit off of this social isolation and lack of social cohesion, i.e., division. Because what it means is that instead of reaching out to your community for support or an item, is that instead you reach out to corporations. And let's look at it from the other direction, and then we'll get back to that. I think that'll be helpful, right? So if you have a functioning community and you need something, I don't know, maybe you need a fan for whatever reason, right? Then you can reach out to your community and be like, hey, friends, I need a fan for the next 72 hours. Does anyone have one that I can borrow? Generally speaking, yes. Right? Or maybe you need a ride to a doctor's appointment or the airport. Hey, community, is anyone available to do this for me? Would really appreciate it. We'll be happy to return the favor. But if you don't have that community, if you don't have that social cohesion, what is your option? Hey, Amazon, I need a fan. Hey, Uber, I need a ride. Right? And so, I see these like invisible cages that we're in as very much like also feeding the old paradigm. And, for me, and I hope this isn't offensive to anyone, but for me, the imagery that's really illuminating for this is like imagining us as like little piggies in our own little cages, right? And just waiting for our ultra wealthy and mega corporate, like, I don't want to say overlords, but I'm just going to say it, overlords, to come and feed us, right? Fatten us up. Okay. So what I mean when I say that one of my favorite activities is talking to strangers is that one of my favorite activities is treating other people like they're part of the human family. Because they are. We are all part of the human family. And I know that there are huge segments of the population who still do not believe or feel this. But I also know that more and more people do. More and more people are waking up. And part of waking up is coming to see that we are all connected. Coming to feel and understand that we're all part of the same whole. We're all just different manifestations of the same consciousness. And so, regardless of where you are in your journey, I think this part of integrating this new awareness is shifting how we approach other humans, just in our day-to-day interactions with each other. right? So instead of what I want to encourage folks to do is, instead of seeing other people as stranger danger, try seeing them as a distant cousin. You know, instead of thinking of like, we'll use the grocery store again, because I'm always talking about the grocery store, right? But like, instead of seeing the grocery store line as like just another transaction you got to get through, you know, imagine, I don't know, imagine you're like hanging out at a family reunion, you know, and maybe maybe that actually brings up some really uncomfortable feelings for people. But what I'm trying to get at is like, it is okay to have casual interactions with people that you don't know. And if there is part of you that needs permission to make eye contact with someone and smile instead of look away all scared, you know, if there is part of you that needs permission to tell some stranger like, hey, great outfit, cute dog, you know, then like, I am giving you that permission right now. It is okay. It is okay to like just spread a little kindness and a little warmth around this world. One thing I'd like to acknowledge is that we have all these technological solutions that enable us to avoid interacting with other people. Right? You can get takeout. You can basically get anything delivered to your door these days, right? If you're bored, instead of having a conversation or interacting with another human being, a family member, a friend, you can stream a show. It's so easy, right? But just because we have these solutions doesn't mean that they're actually improving our lives. Because the fact is that human connection, social connection, and the sense of belonging are actually just deep, fundamental human needs, just like water, just like food, just like shelter. I think we all just have so much trauma around this, right? Relational trauma, that it feels like such a big deal. Or maybe lack of practice, if we've just been living behind a screen. I get it. I really became aware of the fact that it doesn't need to be like this when I was living in Costa Rica. Because what they do there, and I mean, frankly, we do this in a lot of other countries as well, but it was really on display for me in Costa Rica. Because every time I got into the elevator, they would nod to each other and say, good afternoon, good morning. And when they got off, they'd say, have a great rest of your day. I mean, in Spanish, right? And there was just something so mundane and natural about it in that context, because it was such a part of their cultural practice. But it just jumped out at me because I was so used to being in the United States, where, you know, I don't know, I mean, I'm like, let's bring some awareness to this, right? It's like there is a 6-inch bubble around us, right? And we're so trained that, you know, if there's a person here, we look right over there. You know, it's just that like, it's not just respect. It's like it goes beyond respecting a person's personal space all the way over to acting like you ain't there. And I want to really bring out the fact that this is not just a benign practice. Because what it is effectively we are neglecting each other. Neglecting children leaves them feeling unseen, unheard, and unimportant. And it can lead to things like depression and anxiety and substance abuse and inability to form significant relationships with other people. It can impact their ability to trust other humans? Does this sound familiar? And our emotional and mental reactions to this kind of behavior doesn't stop when we leave childhood. You know, I mean, if any of you out there who are listening to this podcast are parents, recall a time when you tried to speak to your child and they just didn't respond to you. How did that feel? You know, I know that we want to say, hey, I'm the adult in the situation, you know, and so I shouldn't let this bother me, but it does, right? Or, you know, if you don't have children, just think about any time you tried to reach out to someone for connection, a bid for connection, and it wasn't reciprocated. Or shoot, you got left on red. That doesn't feel good, right? We all are familiar with this. Well, that's what we're effectively doing to each other every single time that we're pretending like the other one doesn't exist in this world. Like childhood neglect, this cultural practice has impacts on our emotional and physical health and well-being. And it can deeply cut us. And I had sort of two experiences that really drove this home for me. The first one I'll mention was I was leaving a grocery store. And, you know, if anyone's playing a drinking game to this podcast, grocery store is definitely going to be one of them. But I was leaving the grocery store, and this grocery store happens to have a security guard at the exits, you know, to prevent theft or whatever. And I go to hand him my receipt. He hands it back. He says, "Have a great day." And I said to him, "I hope you have a great day too." And he stopped and he said, "Thank you so much for saying it back." And there was almost a little desperation in his voice and a little heartbreak. And I thought about the hundreds of people that man interacts with on a daily basis. And about the fact that it sounds like very few people are saying it back to him. You know, like most people are leaving him on red. And I could just hear in his voice the damage that this has done to him, right? And, you know, I get it. Like he's paid, that's his job. He's paid to do that. You know, he can take off his uniform at the end of the day and leave it at work. But, you know, the reality is that that security guard is still a human being. This practice that he is just getting fire hosed with day in and day out is impacting him. And not only is it impacting his like personal, emotional, and like mental well-being, but it's also impacting his understanding of humanity. You know, I mean, think about this. If you have an experience of wishing hundreds of people a good day and none of them say it back, what does that tell you about humans? Now, this other story, other interaction I had, I have to give a little bit of backstory. So, you know, I grew up very poor, but I also have a big heart, and you might be able to tell that. And so I had to kind of make a rule with myself pretty early that I wasn't going to carry cash. And later in life, when I started to have more money, you know, I wanted to balance this out. And so, you know, my personal rule now is that if someone stops me and asks me for money, I will give them what I have. You know, and part of the reasoning for me behind this is that no one wants to be asking strangers for money. No one wants to be in that position. So, at any rate, so I'm walking downtown, and this man speaks to me and asks me for a dollar or two or something, and I just happened to not have any cash on me. And so I stopped and I said, "I'm so sorry, I don't have anything on me." And I don't quite remember what happened next, but he just started telling me, he says, People act like I'm not even here. I have been asking for help and they won't even look at me. And he just seemed beside himself about it, And I don't know the rest of his story. I don't know anything about him besides the fact that that man seemed broken by people's unwillingness to even acknowledge that he had spoken to them. And again, that person is a human. And we don't have to fix everyone's problems, and we can't. I couldn't help him with the problem that he had in that moment, but I could give him a minute of my time. And I wished him good luck. And I apologized for not having any cash to give to him. Like a sense of belonging, physical touch is a basic human need. And going without it for long periods of time can negatively impact your emotional health. That's why hugs with friends and loved ones are so important. Hugs also promote feelings of love, connection, trust, bonding, and safety. Studies have also shown that hugs reduce stress, depression, and loneliness. Long hugs also release endorphins, which relieve stress and pain and promote feelings of happiness and euphoria. If you've never had a hug that lasted 20 seconds or more, find a close friend and try it out. You're in for a real treat. But in this moment when rates of social isolation are higher than ever, and 1/3 of all households are single-person households, it might be a little more difficult for folks to get enough of that good. This is why self-love is so important, because you can't share something you don't have yourself. The good news is you can hug yourself. And self-hugs can provide the same positive benefits of hugs with other people, because your brain and nervous system can't tell the difference. There are several approaches to self-hugs, but this is the technique my somatic coach showed me, and it helped me through some of the darkest days following my divorce. For those of you watching on video, here's a photo of me demonstrating. And if you're just hearing my voice, we'll have a link to this in the show notes. You ready? Okay. Take one of your arms and put your hand under your other arm so that your fingers are gently wrapped around your side. And then take your remaining arm and gently hold your opposite shoulder with your hand. I like to rest my cheek on the back of my shoulder hand because it just feels a little cozier. You can hold this position for however long you'd like. Shoot, sometimes if I'm having a rough moment but have to be out in public, I'll just hug it out all the way through. This practice can be a little awkward at the beginning, but feel into it. Try to give yourself the hug you've been craving. You can give yourself a little extra squeeze with your fingers. You can rock or sway gently, whatever feels best for you. If you want to kick it up a notch, try bringing your awareness into your heart and then say to yourself, I love you. If you haven't practiced this yet, keep working at it until you can say it like you really mean it, and then bask in those love vibes. We can help co-create a more loving and aligned world, one self-hug at a time. All right, let's get back into the episode. So what I'm trying to suggest is that as you're going through your day-to-day, as you are integrating your new awareness, as you are coming to feel more and more certainly our shared humanity, and depending on, your spiritual inclination, frankly, just our oneness, right? As that comes to be more real for you, then I encourage you and invite you to practice talking to strangers. Because what I think you know is that they're you and you're them, right? But it's just that it's been so ingrained for us, for all different kinds of reasons, that it's not okay to talk to other people. It's dangerous, and in fact, they might not like it. And that may still be true. But you know what? I trust in your social skills to be able to figure that out, right? And there are plenty of ways to be kind and friendly and warm to people that are not intrusive. Right? One of my favorite things to do is if I see someone walking with a dog, I'll just literally shout at them, "Hey, cute dog, move on." Right? Maybe I'll see someone and they just have incredible personal style. I love your style. Great glasses. Super easy. And I just want to acknowledge that, yes, this can be awkward, especially if you're not used to it. I mean, and I'm saying this as a person who used to hide behind my hair. I used to have pretty long hair that I straightened, and so it would kind of form this like curtain over my face, and I legitimately would hide behind it. And it was kind of like my thinking, and I I hope no one's who's watching this like experience this from me, but like it was kind of this curtain where it was like, oh, I can't see you, so you can't see me, so I'm not going to respond. So look, I've been there, right? I've also totally done the thing where you awkwardly smile and say hi, but no sound actually comes out. I don't know why. I mean, the throat chakra can be hard for women, but the point is that I've been there, right? So, be compassionate with yourself. You don't have to walk right into having little mini conversations with people you don't know, right? You can start with just making eye contact and smiling, right? When you're walking around your neighborhood and you come across someone, instead of looking away or looking at your feet or pretending like you're looking at something over there, or shoot, like there's this like really studied, like I am looking right ahead and I don't see you kind of thing that we do sometimes. Practice just really softly making eye contact and smiling. And if you start to get comfortable with that, you can add in a hi, And I've been, as I've been preparing this episode, I mean, I've been really trying to like really dive into this. I mean, I do this already, but just really experiment. Like, what happens if this is my thing I'm doing? And more often than not, they will smile and say hi back, because reality mirrors to you what you put out. Right? And that's where the power is. Because, like I've said before, the seeds of new earth are already there. We just need to activate them and water them with a little friendliness, give them a little warmth so that they can start to grow, right? Like what you're doing when you do this is you are saying to other people, it's okay for you to do this too. We're friendly out here. You can trust us. You're safe. And that's how we start to lay the foundation for new earth. That's how we start to build that social cohesion that we're going to need to address, all kinds of issues facing us, right? And this is the way that we start to be able to build the ability to act collectively rather than looking to leadership, who we know is not going to show up. But this is one of the ways that we take our power back, because it doesn't serve us as the collective to act like the other parts of us aren't here. Integrating the realization that we're all part of the same human family is how we lay the foundation for new earth. It's how we come to see and recognize and build our collective power, just by treating each other like we're distant cousins, because we are. We're all sort of so concerned about intruding, but it doesn't have to be intrusive. And when you accidentally make eye contact with someone, you can just smile and then look away, as opposed, rather than acting like it's the worst thing in the world. You can think about it more as, hey, I accidentally made eye contact with another one of my manifestations. Isn't it funny that we're both here? Have a good day. And that's really, that's become one of my favorite activities. I mean, I've already said talking to strangers, but, a different facet of it is like, see if you can really see the divinity that exists in you in the other person. I've been attending some of these workshops that are led by I'll say a Buddhist practitioner. He's not a monk anymore. But one of the things that he has us do during these workshops is to listen to each other speak in a non-agendaed way. So, you're paired off, someone is given 3 minutes or something to speak on a topic, and you are just there to listen. There's no responding, there's no crosstalk, nothing. And what's been so interesting to me about these exercises is that it really truly feels like witnessing another piece of that divine consciousness that exists in another body, being like, reporting from over here, like, let me tell you about what I've been experiencing, it's a trip. And then we switch and I do the same. Let me tell you what I've been learning in my journey, and there's a surreal quality to it. Since I've been able to sort of really see that shared humanity and shared divinity. And I'd encourage you to see if you can see it too. Something else I used to do in this kind of vein, back when I still had a car, is, when I'd be stopped at a red light and people would be crossing the street, I'd just look at one of them and I'd say, you're me, and I'm you. And I'd try to really feel that. Pick another person. You're me and I'm you. I hope you can feel my love. And maybe that feels silly, but, this exercise, I think it helps us to really bring into our day-to-day reality the knowing, that deep inner knowing that so many more of us are coming to have, which is that we're all just different manifestations of the same consciousness. And I want to acknowledge too that, look, we're all humans. So, for instance, while I was getting ready for this episode, one day I was like, I'm going to say hello to everyone. And the next day I was like, I'm feeling kind of depleted today and I just don't have it in me. That's okay. Sometimes we just don't have the bandwidth. That's okay. And if you were going around trying to say hello to people and they're not responding to you, know that that's a possibility for them too. This moment is kind of difficult, just an understatement, right? So we can all just be understanding. And that person also knows that you still tried. Just to go back to childhood for a second. So there's this idea that a single smile can help someone wake up. And, I had experiences around this again in my childhood where, periodically, a stranger would sparkle at me. And, either directly at me or just sort of would be sparkly nearby. And that was so critical for me because, I don't want to put too fine of a point on it, but my childhood was very dark. It was full of heavy, dense energies. And that was my whole world. But having those people sparkle at me let me know that there was something else. Oh gosh, I'm tearing up a little bit. Those strangers, knowingly or unknowingly, they let me in on the secret that it didn't have to be that way. And that was such a gift, because I knew that as dark and as dense and as heavy as what I was living through was, that there was something else, and I just had to find it. And now I get to be sparkly. Because I like to keep this concrete, over the next week or so, I'd really like to encourage you to make eye contact and smile at 10 different strangers. See how it goes. And if that feels easy, or if you're like, man, I smile at strangers all the time, great. Take it a step further. Say something to them. Have a great day. I love your outfit. If that feels comfortable for you, you're talking to people all the time, take it a step further, right? Maybe you run across someone and they're struggling to get through a door because their hands are full. May I hold the door for you? Can I help carry something? Help you carry something? Shoot, I was like, I was going to the gym. I went somewhere else, not the grocery store. I went to the gym, had my e-bike. It was raining, so I brought it inside to put in the inside bike rack. And I'll tell you, trying to manage a door and an e-bike at the same time is not easy. I probably bent something on my bike. But one of the times, a person who was not in the gym, just a stranger walking by, saw me struggling, and he said, "Can I help you? Let me hold the door for you." And I was like, thank God. And I think we can all relate to those moments when our hands are full and we wish we had a third hand. You can be that third hand for someone, this is like, we can be the miracles we want to see in the world, right? So look out for those opportunities. Another opportunity for this is when a service worker does something for you. Say you're checking out at the grocery store. I'm not going to be able to say it without laughing now, but say you're checking out at the grocery store. They bagged your groceries. Thank you so much. They didn't have to do that. I know they're paid to do that, but like the human behind that uniform didn't have to do that for you. Thank you so much for taking the time and putting in the effort to bag my groceries so I didn't have to. Thank you so much for wishing me a good rest of your day. Sometimes I laugh at myself because I feel like I out-service customer service people sometimes. I'm like I'll jump into all the niceties that they're sort of supposed to do before they even get to it, and but it doesn't hurt me, it doesn't hurt them, and in fact, it just makes the interaction just a little nicer, why not? I think in this moment, when things feel so uncertain and there's a lot of, frankly, scary things happening, it's not cool in the spiritual community to admit being afraid or having anxiety or whatever, but I'll do it. Shoot, I'm still a human. I still feel anxiety. I still see things going on in the world and feel a little concerned about it sometimes, right? So in this moment when there is so much coming to the surface and when so many things are starting to dissolve to make room for the new, I think we could all do with a little more kindness and a little more warmth. And I think too that if we can share some of that with other people, it will help repair some of that lost social cohesion. It'll help combat some of that loneliness that so many of us are feeling now. And more importantly, it will help to build a beautiful foundation for New Earth and that more loving, kinder, more compassionate, unified world that we all know is possible. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the New Humans for New Earth podcast. My name is Queenie. If you found this episode to be inspiring, helpful, or informative, please share it with your friends, your partner, a family member, or anyone that you love. If you loved this episode, please leave a review. And be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. This is how we grow the New Humans community and help inspire others to join us in helping to co-create New Earth. This world is what we make it. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode.